Cove Productions presents the Solo in South Philly podcast with your host and local legal whiz, with knowledge, Mark Kachi.
This episode is dedicated to the memory of our classmate, Amber Andalara, who passed away tragically from an asthma attack shortly after completing her law school final. We miss you, Amber. What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Solo in South Philly podcast. Our season 1 is called Law School Reunion. It is a remix with the homies from the Midwest side. Each episode, I'll be reuniting with a different law school colleague. We will discuss what led them to law school, their law school experience, and what they do now. Today's guest is Nikki Maples. Nikki Maples has been an active member in the family law community in Austin for over 2 decades. Her practice is exclusively dedicated to family law matters related to divorce and custody disputes. Her hallmark is her ability to take a creative and thoughtful approach when dividing marital assets in cases involving complex property matters such as businesses and high net worth estates. But her experience is applicable to all family matters. Nikki is a passionate practitioner who is dedicated to helping families concerned about life beyond divorce or the result that divorce may have on their children. Not every family law matter has to be a heartbreaking event, but with that in mind, Nikki pursues divorce cases and all family matters with creativity, compassion, and sincerity, and her credo is rooted in authenticity. Nikki was in my law school class, and I wanted her to join because she demonstrated that you are capable of accomplishing more than you think you may be able to. Nikki was a mother, she was a gym rat, and she made a lot of friends in law school. Nikki seemed to maintain her focus, and as a result, she has accomplished a lot. Let's welcome Nikki Maples to the program. How you doing, Nikki?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good seeing you.
Same here.
All right, so let's talk about life before law school. If I remember correctly, were you like a career changer when you came to law school?
I was a lot older than the rest of our classmates. I was a paralegal for about 12 years in family law before I went to law school. And so at some point I decided to sit on the other side of the desk and just put myself in law school, took a stab at it.
And what about that gave you the desire to want to join law school? Is it that you felt you could do what the attorneys are doing? What was it?
That's exactly what it was. I felt as a paralegal, and today I feel the same way. I felt like I was doing all of the work except for walking into the courtroom and arguing the case. I was meeting with the clients. I was preparing the file. On many cases, I felt like I knew the case a lot better than the lead attorney did. And at some point, I would just hand over this baby of a file, and I would watch all the magic unfold in court, and I became envious of it. And then I realized soon after actually practicing law, there's so much more than just case file preparation. But that is what led me. I thought, I can do this. I'm doing it anyway. So to some degree, that was truthful. Now, having practiced, I realize that's not the case.
Gotcha. So you're from Texas, correct? Born and raised?
Yes.
Okay. And what made you decide to pick Thomas Coooley Law School to go to school?
In full transparency, I did not get into any of the Texas schools. And at some point I had applied to the Texas schools. I didn't get in and decided, well, I guess that goes my career. And I just threw in the towel. And my now husband really encouraged me to apply to other states. And I was reluctant because I had a 8-year-old at the time that I was applying, and I didn't want to pull him away from his dad. We were divorced, but I didn't want to disrupt his life. And there was just some fear about leaving everything comfortable and going to another state. But I went ahead and applied to 5 other states, including Michigan, and I got into I got into all 5 of them. And then I got into Coooley, and I went to Michigan because I had extended family there. So I had at least 2 people I knew in the state. And so that's why I went to Michigan.
And what was that adjustment like coming from Texas?
It was horrible. Aside from the climate shock, when I arrived, it was, I think, it must have been in the May time period. And so my son, Milan, stayed back with his dad to finish school, and he was going to join me at the summer break and finish in Michigan with me. And when I arrived, it took about 4 weeks, approximately a month, for my furniture to show up. And so I literally sat in an empty apartment with like a canvas soccer chair, a UT football canvas soccer chair, and I read my books, and I went to Target and I got a bar stool, and I sat at the bar and I would, type and do the best I could. And it was really depressing. So the transition was horrible, not to mention the first, semester of law school, you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. You don't know anybody. And then the climate, going from Texas, we have some ice in the winter, and that's about it. And so the climate was a total shocker. And I had a little bitty Nissan car too that was not meant for snow. So all of it was like an experience.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of us that weren't from Michigan all dealt with major adjustments in some sort of way. What was life during law school, and especially in the beginning?
In the beginning, it was, I really felt like I had made a huge mistake. I'd left everything that was comfortable. I'd left a pretty good job as a paralegal, albeit I had probably maxed out at my salary. But the beginning was fraught with fear. I remember showing up to our first class with you and everybody else, and our friend Amber, it was contracts. Yep. And I remember she said, I'm really having a hard time with contracts. And I was like, oh, me too. And I said, good thing we're starting off with criminal law. And she was like, no, today's contracts. And I had prepped for the wrong class. And I mean, I felt nauseous to the point of like, I was going to throw up right then and there. And I contemplated running because I contemplate. So I thought, if I get called on, I'm dead. I'm dead. And now retelling this story, it's funny because the fear is just, well, for me, it was the fear of getting called on and feeling stupid and not knowing and being unprepared. And I think looking back, so much of that energy is unnecessary. But then again, as a practicing attorney, I can see it makes you take that experience, that classroom transfers into the courtroom, it's absolutely serious. There's nothing that is should be done half-ass or in the courtroom, much less in law school. So it's a lot of fear, but I understand why now. Luckily, I did not get called on that first class. And so then I was a maniac about checking the schedule for the first semester about prepping.
Yeah, Professor Scott, I think that was like, you couldn't get a better way to get baptized into law school, right? Because I remember he starts talking, he's making small talk, and he seemed like this very nice guy, right? And then he calls on the first person. I think the first person might have even volunteered. And he just lays into them. And like, the person was prepared, but the way the Socratic works, you're never right. And it's like, if you're right, let me just switch things around. And then what would the answer be? And then what would the answer be? And it really made the rest of our classes much easier. Because if you could handle his Socratic, then the others were a breeze.
Yeah, I remember, and I think it was his class. I remember one of our classmates. I don't remember her name at all, but and maybe you recall this story. But she, moments before she got called on, she had bumped her water or her beverage, and it spilled on her laptop. And her laptop just it went black. And then she got called on. She stood up and she said, "I'm sorry, I just had an accident. Like, I don't have. In fact, I need to clean up my desk space, and I don't have a computer." And he made her proceed. And he said, well, if you're right, then you know the case. And I remember thinking, I would have just said, man down, can't do it. And she didn't do a great job, but he carried her through. And he just said, did you read it? She said, I did. I've briefed it. I'm ready for it. But also we had multiple classes. There were multiple cases. She was having a hard time. And it's funny talking to you right now because I can pull back those memories and I can apply them to where I am in my practice right now. And I've had judges do that. I'll get a curveball. We've all had that happen in court. I get a curveball where I'm not expected. I'm not prepared. I'm about to dive into the Texas Family Code where I'm like, I'm about to search for a needle in a haystack on this evidence and just try. And I've had judges say, Miss Maples, could it be that X, Y, and Z could apply? And the judge is carrying you through because the right result needs to happen. And so, yeah, I wasn't expecting it within this conversation to pull out memories and apply them to today. And she did just fine. But it's one of those, yeah, you're right. Professor Scott, made the rest of it feel like, okay, if you can survive that, you're going to be okay.
But yeah, back to what you said about applying to court, because I know there was students that tried to weasel out of speaking, or, they didn't like it. And I was like, no, if you plan to go to court, this is it, right? Because in contracts, you have your case textbook, you have the UCC code book, you have whatever your notes are. And it's the same thing in court. You don't know what you're going to have to draw on. You can only commit certain bits to memory. And in real time, you got to pull that and speak articulately on the record.
Yeah, you have to be as prepared as you can, but also the longer we do this, which starts with law school, the longer we do this, you're conditioned with having to pivot quickly and find a solution. And I think the longer that I do it, I'm more comfortable in my county with my judges. I can tell the court, if you'll give me just a moment, I need to look, I need to research this. And I'm perfectly comfortable. And more times than not, a court will say, no problem, Ms. Maples, why don't we take a short recess so you can collect yourself? Now, you don't have that luxury in law school, but there is, you got to think quickly. And so you're conditioned. I remember having one of the lawyers that I worked for before law school tell me, you will come out rewired. You are rewired. You look at things differently. You see a puddle on the street and you think of a liability, your brain is rewired. And it's the same thing in terms of how we attack or how we, address conflict or how we handle it in court. You are rewired to calmly and stay collected and find a solution. So yeah, it's interesting. It's fun.
And from what I remember, you made a lot of friends. You were working hard, but you made a lot of friends. You had your crew in 1L, right?
Yeah.
You had a good support group. Let me ask you this. You mentioned you were older. You weren't that older, but I think it seemed like it at the time because you were at a different station in life, right? A lot of us didn't own furniture, right? We never, we were still kids. What was it like, having a son and those responsibilities and, a significant other back in Texas and having to deal with the pressure of law school?
Oh man, it was hard. I'm just going to say it was hard. But the old saying, it takes a village to get through life, not just to raise kids, but it takes a village to get through life. And I just had so many people either supporting me or helping me. So the family that I had in Michigan could not have done it without them. So my son was 8, 9, and 10. We returned home when he was 10 to Texas. And so he was able to go to school with his cousins. So we attended a lot of night classes and I couldn't be there. And so, he had a room at his aunt and uncle's house. But for them, I don't know how I would have gotten through it. My now husband, he and I had been dating for 3 years before when I left for law school. And then I was leaving for 3 years. And he is also a divorce lawyer. He too I didn't have to worry about managing a relationship because he had been through law school. He understood and he was a sure thing. He wasn't going to go anywhere. So I took that concern of a relationship because I just could not have managed being a single mom, a law student, maintaining a relationship. It was just, he was super easy. And also he's got a memory that is crazy. So whenever I was stuck on a case, I could literally tell him the case and he would start to go, oh, I remember. And he would work through it. So, my relationship with my now husband, it was either going to work or it wasn't going to work. And it was something I couldn't worry about because I had to keep my head down. I had to stay focused. And we look back on that time and hands down, it made us stronger because when you don't get to see your partner very often, you hold back and those little petty arguments you get into, they just don't matter because you miss your partner so much. Also, when you miss your partner, you actually care about their day. What was your day like? And so I wanted to hear about his day. I would look for that escape from law school. And he was my escape. parenting, again, in full transparency, not my shiniest moments. I went, fast and furiously. We graduated the exact same time, which was less than 3 years, I think, right? We were in the same class, I think.
Yeah, I graduated, I guess technically it was 2011, January.
Then yes, we were in the exact graduate. And so we actually, I don't even know if you know this, I think we finished 1 or 2 semesters ahead of a lot of people started with. So yeah, I mean, I was just so determined to keep my head down, like hit the gas and get through law school and get home. It was a stepping stone for me. So parenting kind of took a back seat. But what's interesting is I talked to my son about it now, and he's like, oh, those days were great because we learned how to snowboard in Michigan and he made the best of it. I also, while I had my study crew in law school, I remember entering feeling older than everybody, but now in retrospect, our ages were all over the place. I mean, but I mean, there weren't many of us that had kids. And I think I went in with this big guard of, I'm not here to make friends. I'm a single mom. I have a long drive home. I just want to do my stuff. And I think I really kind of didn't engage with people for a while. And then I just realized, man, everybody needs a study buddy and support. And so it all came together. Yeah.
And there's another variable you didn't throw in there because a lot of people put this off to the side and never get around to it. Fitness. How anyone who knows you knows you're a gym rat, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's still the case.
Yeah.
How are you able to squeeze that in as well? And what would you say to people that can't make time for it?
So you have to make time for it. You have to. Period. I forgot about that. That's so funny. So I, probably you as well, really poor during law school. Like we went during the recession, law school loans were plummeting. Like it was horrible. And so there just wasn't a lot of excess. And so I didn't have money for a gym. And so the way I handled it was I became a personal trainer. So I studied and got licensed online in about 6 weeks or something. And then I started personal training, which meant that I had access to a gym. And so my day would go like this. I would wake up probably 5 or 6 a.m. I would try to study for an hour. I would go get my son and my nieces and nephews on the bus because I did the morning routine while the aunt and uncle did the evening routine. And then I'd get them on the bus around 8 o'clock. I would go to the gym, work out myself, take 1 to 2 clients. And then I was in my car probably by 11. And I would drive to Coooley and I would study from like 11 until our class at 6. And it wasn't every day, but that was most days. And then on the weekends, I would take myself to like a high school stadium because it was free. And I would do workouts there. And the reality is I was in really good shape because I was diligent about it, but my brain needed it. Like it was my outlet. I'm super high energy. My husband says, you're like a dog that needs to be run. So I'm high energy. But with high energy is also comes high stress. And so it was my way of like calming myself. Plus, I mean, it's no mistake that like lawyers have I think that statistic is like the highest in substance and alcohol abuse because it's a high stress job. And while in my opinion, I don't think I was the best mom at that time, the number one person was my kiddo. And so if I'm at max with school and at max with being a single mom, and I'm not healthy, then I can't be a good mom. And so it just starts to snowball. I'm short-tempered with my kiddo, which is never okay. I'm distracted with school. My weight is bad. Like it just snowballs. And I think so it just has to happen. And so moving forward, I got licensed, came back, and then I decided I was going to compete. And I did bodybuilding competitions I did figure competitions for about 3 or 4 years and then decided I just got a little burned out on it. But now, yes, fitness and health is number one in terms of self-care. And I do a monthly article for the Austin Bar Association on wellness. And sometimes it's not fitness. Like my last article was, you have to make time to take time of everyone needs vacations. And so I think it's more of just a self-care. So that's my story.
Yeah, let's talk about a little bit about parenting. Let's talk about that again, because you seem to have some guilt because you maybe weren't able to spend as much time with your son when you were in school. But When you talk to him about it, does he appreciate the example that you set? Because, a lot of kids don't get to see their their parents doing homework, and then they get told, do your homework, study, do this, do that. And then, they don't really get it. Like, you don't have to do homework, but just seeing you working harder than I'm guessing he was at that age, right?
Yeah.
Maybe instill a little bit of fire into him and realizing that he needs to work hard to get to where he wants to be.
Yes, probably. I'll tell you that we've had lots of conversations about it. He does not have a memory that I was that I was a bad mom during that time. But yes, I carry lots of guilt about it. Not really so much anymore, but we've talked about it. And my kiddo struggles with severe learning disabilities. I'm attention deficit. He's the other one, ADHD. And so we have that connection and we talk about it. So at a time when I was really studying hard, it was, in my opinion, I had to study harder than everyone else because I would get distracted easily. I felt like I couldn't retain it. Milan was diagnosed with ADHD when we were in Michigan. And, I was hesitant to put him on medication because I just didn't want to. Well, then I realized I need to give it a shot. And I remember doing flashcards, multiplication flashcards, and he wasn't able to get it. And he would just frustrate and just melt down. And rather than like calming him and saying it's going to be okay, we just have to practice, I just decided in those moments to relate. And I was like, let me tell you how my homework goes. Sometimes I have to read a paragraph 4 times. Sometimes I don't understand, or I've read 2 pages and I realize I wasn't paying attention and I got to back up. And I just shared in those frustrating moments. And so what I said was, we just both have to work hard. And so I made it more about us instead of me being mom, right or wrong. That was how I handled it. And we got through it. And so I think what he says when we discuss it now is, he's like, I felt like we were a team, and that makes me feel good. And then he was there. We pulled him out of school. And when I got licensed, he came to the courtroom, obviously, and watched me get sworn in. And he said it wasn't until sitting in that courtroom, because he had never been in a courtroom. He was 11 years old. And he said, I didn't realize. I knew you were going to be a lawyer. I knew you were studying. I think at age 11, I didn't know what a lawyer was until he stepped foot in the courtroom and saw me. And then he's like, whoa. And then now that we've done stuff on Zoom, he's watched it a couple times and he's like, you're really good. So it does. I think it motivates him, but that's how I handled it with, being a mom. Was I just made us a team.
That's great. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So any advice to people thinking about going to law school?
Do it. So I threw up a bunch of roadblocks on myself before I got there. And I think to some degree, people tend to naturally self-sabotage ourselves and our success. And when I thought about going to law school, I kept thinking, I cannot take on all this debt. I can't take on all this debt. Like, it's just, how does someone get past 6 figures in debt? And the reality is, yes, it is a debt, but it's a loan, but it's also an investment. I mean, it is an investment that I was fortunate enough to pay off very quickly, but also if it's the financial aspect that's turning you off, the interest rates are easy. And we are a high wage earning career. And so don't let that deter you. The other part was the disruption in life. Like, oh, this is 3 years and I've got all these things going on. The reality is it's a blip in time. I don't know if you feel that way, but I feel like
definitely.
I feel like I blinked and I was like, that was so hard, but it went by like that. So if you're interested, do it. I also, in managing my own, I guess I left this part out. I was also diagnosed with adult ADD while I was in law school. And so I didn't know I had this. I studied for the LSAT for about 6 months, kind of on my own. And I took a practice test. Well, I took the LSAT, horrible score. And so then I thought, okay, I'm going to we have a company here called the Test Prep Guy, and that's all he does. And he's amazing. So I took 1 year, and I was still, a paralegal. So I took 1 year and I slowed down and I really studied, and I struggled with the LSAT. And my husband and I disagree. I think the LSAT doesn't begin to touch law school or the bar or even practicing as a lawyer. He thinks it does. He's like, oh, I think they definitely connect. So I studied for a year. I retook the LSAT 2 points higher. and it devastated me. I was just like, I can't, like, I don't know what it is. And so I was just super embarrassed, but I thought, okay, if this is the score, I'm not going to take it a third time. That was when I applied for all the Texas schools. And I'll tell you, getting, I think it's 7-ish denial letters, one after another, takes a toll on your confidence. Like, that was really defeating. And I never in a million years had thought that I wasn't going to law school. So all my friends knew that I was studying for the LSAT. They knew I had taken the LSAT. They knew I had applied to law school. And then I had to tell people I wasn't going to law school. And it was horribly embarrassing. And so whenever I applied to the other schools, the other 5 schools, including Coooley, I told no one. And not even my boyfriend, because I didn't want the embarrassment of having to tell people that I didn't get in again. And then I got into all 5 schools. And so what I would say is, if there are roadblocks you're throwing up to prevent going, such as the disruption in life, it feels hard, the economics behind it, set it aside and just try. If things feel like barriers that you're not imposing, such as low scores, truly don't stop trying. Coooley was really good about taking the non-traditional student, and Coooley was my shot at practicing law. And I remember feeling frustrated because I thought, just because I can't pass this stupid test, I'm going to lose my dream. Because I always knew, like, if I can just get a law license, I will shine. Because I did it for 12 years. I was in courtrooms. I grew up in courtrooms. And so Coooley gave me that opportunity. So if you have an interest, just try it. Just try it and push back those barriers and roadblocks. Push past them.
I think you described a lot of the experiences of people that I've interviewed, as well as a lot of our classmates and other students. And I do agree that the LSAT, while I do believe that someone who does really well on it would probably do well in law school and on the bar, I don't think there's a direct correlation. I just think that they have to have something to equalize, and everyone gets undergrad from different places and majors in different things, and it's just kind of a way of weeding people out. So
yeah,
the people like you that are resilient and say, well, my dream is to be a law school lawyer, not to graduate from Harvard and tell everyone that's where I went. There's a path for that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the bar exam. So you graduated. I'm guessing Texas was always in the cards. So you come back to Texas, and what was bar prep like?
Well, I don't think I washed my hair for 30 days. It stayed in a bun. I was really fortunate because when I returned to Texas, my son and I moved in with my boyfriend, who's my now husband. So now we'd been together for 6 years. So when we moved in and blended our families at that time, he took 100% of all real people, real life responsibilities off my shoulders. I mean, I didn't wash dishes. I didn't do laundry. I didn't cook. He just said, your job is this. Until he said, one more job is you need to actually shower and wash your hair. So I remember I did Barbary, and in Texas, it was held at a hotel conference room. And I thought, okay, just like law school, I need to be seated in the classroom up at the front. I've got to be focused. I need someone talking to me in my face, telling me how to do this. So I had all of my, a big mound of books, and I show up, and it's a very, very little bitty room. There's probably 10 or 15 of us. And what I don't realize is that there's a TV monitor. And so it's all pre-recorded. And I remember thinking, if that TV monitor is going to be what teaches me, I'm screwed. Like, I can't do this. The first day I sat there, and like the first 10 minutes, a lot like law school, I kind of stayed to myself because I wasn't there to make friends. And I remember hearing the buzz and the conversation around me. And I thought, these are not my people. These are definitely not my people. And I was distracted by it. They start the video, and I just started probably self-sabotaging that whole process. I was like, I can't do it recording. I can't do these people. I'm distracted. I think I gave it 2 or 3 days, and either I was genuinely distracted or I had created this scenario of like, this is unworkable. So the other option was to do self-study at home. And so, wake up in the morning, I would put in 1 or 2 hours before the house woke up. Then I would take about a 45-minute break while the house was waking up and the kids are eating, get them off to school. And then I would just sit down at the table, and it was a lot easier because I would spread out on the dining table, and at that point, we knew how to study. Like, we'd been conditioned on how to study and how to prepare, and I could do it my way rather than looking over and seeing people do it other ways and it distracting me of like, maybe they've got an edge, or so what I would say is find what works for you. I ended up, while I am very attention deficit, I ended up listening to it on like 1.5 speed so I could go a little bit faster and you can back it up. And I just found a rhythm that worked for me. I will say also that at some point, so in Michigan, they don't have courses on oil and gas. Well, in Texas, there is a big portion on oil and gas.
Right.
And when I turned to that section and saw like a 95-page outline, and it was probably 11 days before the bar. I mean, sheer meltdown. I mean, I was like, I'm never going to practice law. Like, also, I'm running thin on patience and sleep. I'm 11 days from the bar. Like, my anxiety's building up, and my husband comes home, and I just total meltdown. I was like, I'm not going to practice law. Oil and gas is going to do me in. And he let me have my pity party. And he's like, are you done? And I was like, I might be done. And so he said, let's take it from the top. And I was like, no, I don't want your help. And he's like, I think you need my help. You are spiraling. And I was like, that's a very good point. So, he just was able to take it and kind of break it down in chunks. And I thought, I just have to do the best I can. That then, and I think that was a pivotal moment in my fatigue, obviously. But I remember getting a neck cramp so bad that I couldn't turn my neck because I had been, looking down at a book and looking up at the screen and at the same angle for so many weeks that I got such a bad neck cramp that I had to take like a half of a day off, which made me melt down also. I was like, there's no time to take it. So one of the practices looking back was I should have implemented exercise or stretching somewhere in there, which I didn't do. So my body shut down. I go into this cave. Everything starts to lock up with tension. I'm not exercising. It wasn't a healthy time. I think I studied maybe 6 weeks. Yeah. So, I mean, I passed. I got through it. I passed.
Did they ask oil and gas questions on the bar?
Absolutely. I felt, yes, it was.
Oh, man.
And I felt that trigger and I was like, just collect yourself. You're going to answer it and you're going to move on. Luckily, it wasn't an essay. And so there were maybe 5 questions, which also irritated me because it was like a 95-page outline. And that's the whole thing about the bar is you don't know what they're going to ask. And it's a mound of information.
Yeah. Me and my guests, we've talked about these things and gambling right, gambling wrong. I never got future interest in property. And I remember asking some people, who had already taken the bar, how many questions on the multi-state? How many questions on the multi-state? I made the executive decision not to just not study it. And I thankfully, I guessed right. And there was maybe one question, which even if I studied, who knows if I would have even got it right anyways. Mm-hmm. So I was able to save that time.
I will say real quick, the other thing that back to it takes a village and everyone needs support. For those that are considering law school or even in law school, reach out for support. Like I have a tribe of people that are very, very close to me. It's not a small tribe. And I remember saying, hey guys, send me your good vibes, your positive vibes. And people would send me notes and little cards and text messages. And that stuff helps because you feel alone, you're worried, you're scared. Reach out and just tell people like, hey, I need you guys send me some positive vibes. And I really relied on that because in hindsight, there was a lot of people rooting for me and it just kept me going. So do what works for you.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about when you passed. Tell me that story. Where were you? Like, how did you find out? Who was with you? What did you do?
Isn't it funny that we all know that moment, that very moment? It's like, it's a good moment. So they were supposed to release the results, I think, on a Friday. And my boss at the time said, they usually come about a day early. And I was like, oh, and we were in a 2-week trial. I mean, I wasn't licensed, so I was just there as a clerk or, glorified paralegal. But I sat in this 2-week trial with her. And I mean, it was a hard trial. We had a lot of emotions in there. I was trying to keep my own, I was distracted by the impending results of my bar exam. But the results ended. I'm sorry. the trial ended on a Wednesday, and it was like Wednesday morning, the ruling came in, and it was an absolute win. And we prevailed. It was super fun. And my boss said, hey, your results are likely we went out for a big long lunch, had champagne to toast. And she said, your results are likely coming out tomorrow. I want you to take the afternoon off, take the firm credit card, and go get a massage. And I was like, I love you. Thank you for that. And so she was like, and of course at that lunch, I even said, so if I don't pass, what does employment look like? And she was like, you're still employed. You're going to take it again if you don't pass, but it's going to be fine. So I literally drive from that champagne lunch to a salon, and I have a massage, and I'm driving home, and my buddy who was in law school in Baylor in Texas, he was 1 year behind me. He just texts me and says, congratulations. And I'm pulling into my neighborhood, and I just responded with 3 question marks. And he says, the bar exam. And I wrote back, the results aren't out. Please don't do that. Because I thought he was saying, congratulations, it's going to be fine. And he sent a screenshot, and it had my name and I think it was my, my exam number, test number. And I looked at it, and I pulled my car over, and I literally wept. Like, I remember holding onto the steering wheel and just thinking, it's done. It's over. Thank God it's over. Like, I just remember crying glad because I had passed, but also the anticipation and the waiting. And I just sat there and cried in my car because I was so glad for it all to be done. I remember telling Keith when I was in law school, like, I longed for the day of just having a normal day. Wake up, go for a workout, go to work, come home and just watch some TV or cook a dinner. Those luxuries didn't really exist when I was in law school. And so, so then I call my husband, and then I call my team and, or my office team. And she said, take tomorrow off, enjoy this, relax. It was a really fun, relieving time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's like you said, there's this thing hanging over your head. It's like this during this whole time, you feel like I'm not good until I clear that hurdle. And then just the thought of having to do it all again and.
Yeah. And I'll say this too, like you just said something that triggered a thought. And that was one of the things I did not do well was I put so much weight on becoming a lawyer. Like I got to get through law school. I have to pass the bar. In my head, I put so much pressure of like, this is my success moving forward. This is what is going to make a better life for myself and my son. And you can do that. And I put so much pressure. And the reality is it really shouldn't define us. Like I wish I hadn't put that much pressure, because if it doesn't work out, like the world doesn't end. You got to pivot. You got to either try again, or you're going to find the next career, but don't, I put so much pressure on myself that while I'm a pretty healthy person, I was never sicker than when I was in law school. I just wore myself down. So in hindsight, I could have done some things better, but in reality, had I not passed, I would have tried again. Had I not passed the second time, I may have said I tried, I don't know, but man, it is definitely in your space until you get those results. And it's such a release when you get the results.
Yeah. I mean, there's a guy that we went to law school with. I'm not going to share his name, although he said he wouldn't be willing to talk about it, but he didn't pass a few times, and then it went 10 years. And then had he taken it during COVID, they canceled it and let everyone pass. And he decided not to take it. He takes it the time after, and he passed after 10 years. So you can imagine what that must have felt like.
Well, we have 2 of our friends, and I don't know which one you're referring to, but 2 of them, and it just took them years to pass. And so, like, props to them. I mean, I think at some point I would have been like, I need to close this chapter. I need to close this. But yeah, they persevered and they got there. And yeah, but yeah, the COVID thing, the testing, very bizarre, very bizarre. I'm very jealous.
So you decided to do family law. I guess, how did you get into the firm that you're at and do family law? Was that path always there? Was it a path you forged? Was it the firm that you left when you went to law school?
So I as a paralegal, I was only ever involved in family law. And so when I went to law school, my thought was I needed a new path. Like I'm burned out on family law. I'm going to do something new and exciting. And somewhere in law school, I realized I'm returning to family law because I am good at it. I do actually truly love it. And I knew that for me, I couldn't just review contracts and do tax law. Like I needed real people. I needed real emotions involved because I knew that would motivate me. If I'm representing businesses, it's challenging and complicated. And there's a lot of businesses that happen in my divorces. But if that was solely my practice, I think I may have checked out on it. So I ended up returning to family law. And what was nice about that was the community I grew up in. I was in courtrooms from probably age 21 forward. And a lot of these judges were at my going away party when I left for law school. They were at my swearing in. And so when I entered, I was one of those rare law students who had several offers waiting because I had a reputation already. I don't think I had an appreciation for the reputation I had created, but I did. And so I got hired the last semester of law school. I went to work for a woman named Janet McCullough, who is board certified, has really, really sexy divorce cases, very complicated. And she opened doors for me. I mean, she did a really good job. So I worked with her for, I can't remember, 4 or 5 years. And I got great exposure to incredibly complicated divorce cases. And then at some point, it just ran its course. And so in 2015, I decided to go out on my own, and a lot of stuff happened. 2015, it was January, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go out on my own. I didn't have a real plan, which is not like me, but I decided just to jump. And that same month, my husband and I decided to sell our house and get a new house. So then my home office became no more because we had to show the house. I get into a 6-month lease at sort of an office share place, and it was exactly what I needed at the time, but it wasn't going to be permanent ever. And then after about 6 months of being a solo practitioner, I moved into another office suite with probably 10 other family law attorneys and their support staff, and so who were also my long-term friends in the community. So I had like on-campus support and mentors, and that was really, really good for me. And then at that point, I'm probably maybe 35, 36 years old. And, my husband and I had married at that point, and I thought, okay, we are 11 years difference in age, but we are 20 years difference in our careers. And our retirement then looks very different, right? When he's going to be exiting, I'm going to be ramping up. And so I made a conscious decision, like when I moved into that new office suite, that I was going to be more aggressive in my business decisions and in my law practice in terms of climbing. Because while I wasn't going to retire at the same time he does, I knew that I wanted to be not far behind him, which was still short of what like a 65, if I wanted to retire at 65. So I was forward thinking. My husband was saying, be conservative in your business model, trying to take on big overhead. And I did everything opposite of what he said. And at one point he was like, Nick, you need to do, and I was like, all right, so time out. You have your practice and you run your business your way, and I need you to support me in the way I run mine. And there's a reason why. And so I'll tell you one thing about family law, because I know that you practice family law as well. Man, it makes communication so much healthier with your partner. And so I told him, I need you to really back off on that. And here's why, because it's actually motivated and geared toward our success as a couple down the road. And he heard that loud and clear. And ever since then, he's been my biggest cheerleader. And I think I had a paralegal very quickly, and then I took on an associate for about a year, had no idea what I was doing. But that's part of the fun of it. And then I had a second associate. And then at some point, both of them launched into their own solo practices, which I was super excited about. And then my now existing law partner was a law student at Coooley. Do you know this story?
No, I do not.
Okay. So she was a law student at Coooley and reached out to me through LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm in my last semester, and my husband has been transferred to Texas. And so I've gotten permission from the board at Coooley to do an internship remotely out of state for the last semester. She'd been the only person who had ever done it. They'd never cleared anyone to do it. I don't know if others had asked. And so she said, could I intern? My paralegal brings me this, and I'm like, sure, set her up. I didn't think much about it. So she comes in and, I said, what are you looking for? Well, what do you want to do? And she's like, I need someone to proctor my exams and to give me some work. I need to. And so basically I was like, well, you can shadow and I'm happy to proctor your exams. I'll take any Coooley grad here in Texas or Coooley student. So I didn't really have much expectation about it. I think a month after she started, I broke my right wrist. And so she ended up being like my note taker for a long time. And then she passed the bar, or she took the bar, started working for me actually in that like few months while she's waiting for her bar exam or bar results. And then just prior to them coming out, she said, what does employment look like if I pass the bar? And so I said, do you like family law? And she's like, I really do. And there was so much about her that I saw in myself. We were single moms going through law school together. She reached out to me. She was easy. She came with life experience. And so I brought her on. I hired her as my associate, and she was my associate for 2 years. And then she and I were doing her performance review. And she's a lot like me, which is she's kind of aggressive in her decisions and forward thinking. And she said, I know it's only been 2 years. This is likely premature, but I don't want to waste time because I'm older. And so do you have any interest in bringing on a partner? What does your business plan look like? And so essentially she's saying, what is the path to partnership? And, candidly, there was also wine involved at her performance review. So that made it a lot more comfortable. And I told her, I said, the beautiful thing about owning your own business is I can call the shots. I don't need, to build some model and mirror it off of my husband's firm or another firm, whereas there's a 5, if not 7 to 8 year path to be partner. I said, I can call it. And I said, you're partner material. And so what I want you to do is I want you to build a 1-year partnership path. And she said, I was kind of curious what you thought the partnership path was. I said, I understand. I want you to build what you believe is a reasonable 1-year plan to get to partnership. I said, give it to me, present it, and I'll let you know what I think is workable, not workable. And it was a better plan than what I could have ever built. She was much harder on herself. She gave herself big hoops to jump through, billables. She had said, within this next year, I want to bring in a case, or at least work a case that results in $100,000 net profit to the firm, at least one. She nailed it. I mean, wow. She built her own path, and I would have made her partner at her performance review because I knew she had it. And so we partnered during COVID, and it's the best decision ever. So the best, and she also is really, like I said, she's aggressive in her decisions. And so her business decisions. So she said, I want to be in 50-50. And I said, you might want to pump the brakes. Let me tell you what 50-50 looks like the amount of overhead I have, not insignificant. And I intend to grow the firm quite a bit. And so that's going to be a lot for you to bite off when you're not making quite your own reign yet. And she was like, I know, I'm all in, and I'm motivated by fear. And so this is going to drive me. And I'll be damned, like, she did it. I mean, she's just amazing. So she's kind of a mini me. And yeah. And so now our firm so I was law office of Nikki Maples for a while. During COVID, we became Maples Jones. We now have, I think we're a team of 8. So we have 3 lawyers, 3 paralegals, an operations manager, and a litigation assistant. And we just expanded our office, which is kind of terrifying. So the amount of rent, like it's getting a little bit bigger than what I had hoped for, but it's all shiny and successful. And so I'm going to try not to self-sabotage.
So you're building a heck of an empire there down in Austin, aren't you?
Yeah, but I don't want to get any bigger. Like maybe one more lawyer, and that's about it.
What's the most challenging thing about practicing family law?
Well, my first answer, I don't think really answers your question. I will say this piece, though, that I don't love the business side of practicing law. I just want to be a lawyer. I just want to be a lawyer and practice law. So what was the question?
What's the most challenging part of practicing family law?
I would say the most challenging part is when I have a client who is so clouded with emotion and can't hear the advice and can't, and I don't fault them. I mean, they say in criminal law, your clients are typically not great people that show up on their best behavior, bad people on their best behavior. Family law, you've got really good people that show up on their worst behavior. And so when I've got a client who is incredibly overwhelmed with emotion, judgment is clouded, they can't hear me, they're making mistakes, not taking my advice. I mean, clients don't take my advice all day long. That I can handle. But that is the hardest part. And so, and truly, I would say it's the truly emotionally unstable client. So the longer I've done this, I have put into place, you need to have somebody on your own. I can't be your therapist. While I'm a counselor, I can't be your therapist. And so those are the most challenging ones when they're so clouded by emotions. And I've implemented, or I've seen some of my clients, hit the bottle, or really, there's always the hookers and blow case that frequents about every few years. And so, I'll put my clients into a treatment facility, and I'll tell them, you're happy to go hire another lawyer, but there is a new condition of my representation, and that is you seek treatment in some path, and that you sign a release so that I am in touch with your therapist. Now, I will say those severe cases are ones that involve kids. If there's not kids involved, I'll say my piece, but also I can't really keep everyone healthy. It's not my job. So that's the hard part, is it's hard to detach from those people I see spiraling and not take it home with me. But the longer I do this, you get a little bit more bold in your statements. And I see people just making mistakes after mistakes, not taking advice. And so there's a pretty common phrase I say to my clients that even now my law partner says, and I tell them, here's the deal. My job, you hired me to advise you on the law, present options, advise you on what I think is the better option, but the choice is yours. I mean, I cannot and will not tell you what to do. I will always present options. Oftentimes you won't like the options, but those are the options. I will exhaust all options for you. And I'll tell you what I think you should do and why. If you choose a different option, my life is literally unaffected by the choices you make. And I tell them, you don't follow my advice, or you take this path. Here's what I think the result is going to be, which could be detrimental. It could impact you and your kids, but your life, not mine. And so the longer I do this, I detach a lot better. And I think my clients hear it when I tell them, listen, my life is literally unaffected by the decision you make. So you do you. That kind of, it's a little bit blunt, and I think they hear it better. So, but I find the most challenging part is emotionally unstable clients, the severe ones.
Have you learned how to compartmentalize yet? How do you, let's say you got a good client, something's bad. How do you not take that stress on that they're dealing with? They're going to lose their house, or they're going to lose their kids. How do you not let their stress become your stress?
It takes time. So, and I have an advantage because I did it for so many years before law school. So I saw the mistakes my bosses made and how they took it home. I'd be lying if I said I didn't take it home. But the way I do it is in therapy, it's called healthy detachment. And that is, this is your life. These are your issues. You've brought problems and conflicts to me to attempt to resolve, be creative, find solutions, resolutions. But when they're fearful of how much I'm not going to have any money, I might lose the house, the schedule with the kids is not one that I love. I really just say, life is going to be okay. I also share my own story quite a bit, which is, my ex-husband and I divorced when our kid was 5, and you've got two paths. My ex-husband to this day is one of my very best friends. I talk to him every week. We were great co-parents raising our kid. And it wasn't always easy, but you can choose, right? You can choose to be angry. You can choose to hold that hostility, and it's going to ultimately trickle out into parenting. And so the choice is there. I don't know if I'm really answering your question, other than I just do my best to try to detach. I have a client right now who, they make a significant amount of money. Husband and wife collectively make about $1 million a year, and they have nothing. They rent their house. They lease their vehicles. They have zero savings. They earn it, they spend it. They're in a tremendous amount of debt. I would not sleep at the thought of the amount of debt they have, hundreds of thousands. And I must get panicky phone calls from her all the time. And she's like, I'm only getting this much in child support and I can't make my ends meet. And at first I kind of felt like, oh, man, I've got to fight harder for this. And I caught my breath and I was like, okay, here's the deal. These problems were here long before you hired me as your lawyer. And there's nothing in my law license that says I have to try to figure out how you're going to make your ends meet. You couldn't make them meet before you hired me. And so it happens, right? Like you get sucked in, you get pulled into your cases, but at some point you have to take that breath in clarity and go, nope, nothing in my law license says that I have to figure out how to make your American Express bill get paid. So
I think that's good bit of advice for anyone practicing any form of law. All right, Nikki, as I tell my guests, the time is yours now. So I'm giving you the opportunity to promote something that you would like to promote, cause, your business, whatever, side hustle, whatever that may be.
So Mark, we went to school with a really wonderful person. Her name was Amber Andaloro. And her last semester in law school, she passed away. She had an asthma attack in her sleep. As a result, her family and I had become friends because they also live here in Texas. And her mother has started the ANDA Asthma Foundation. It's ANDA Asthma Foundation. Her mother and a whole team of what she calls angels, they prepare and make knit bonnets and scarves for infants who are struggling with asthma. As I understand it, Amber had a severe case of asthma, but possibly even a rare case of asthma that she struggled with. And so that is a foundation that I think is important. I think it honors her memory. My husband and I, as well as my firm, are big supporters. And so the ANDA Asthma Foundation, I think, would be a really beautiful tribute to her in terms of plugging a foundation.
Yeah, that's great. And I know we've discussed, we're going to dedicate this episode to her memory. She was probably your best friend in law school, and she was an amazing person. And when I put together this, I thought it's a shame. She would have made a wonderful guest because she was, from what I remember, she was a chef, yes. Right? She was a chef who once cooked for Sweet Baby James, right? James Taylor. I remember that was her claim to fame. And I think she had, her hands were hurting her, and she ended up in law school that way. And she was just, the nicest person in our class. Definitely miss her and think about her from often. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And we will add that website to, the show notes so that anyone can check that out.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, Nikki, I wanted you on the show because I felt your journey was one that should be shared with all. I mean, you seem to do it all while in law school. You had your set of challenges. You didn't have it made. And I felt that you took things seriously. You worked hard, but you were able to still have a social life. You're still able to stay fit. You were able to have some fun, and then you're able to get to where you want to be professionally. So I thank you for sharing your journey with others. I think there's so many people that have a lot to learn from what you shared today.
Thank you. Yeah. It's hard. Just law school's hard, but also, man, it's a wild, rough time, and you make connections and you learn stuff about yourself, and it's worth doing. No regrets at all. No regrets. What about you? Do you have regrets?
None. If you're talking about professionally, none. Yeah. None. I mean, I feel like I got to. It's one of those things. You ever heard that saying, like, life is meant to be lived forward but understood backwards? You ever heard that saying?
No, but I like that. Say it again.
Life is meant to be lived forward and understood backwards.
Oh, I like that.
And I'll give you a good example that always hit home with me. And it's Steve Jobs at like some commencement ceremony talks about how he dropped out of school and then voluntarily sat in this like calligraphy class. And how years later he's designing some product and that knowledge ended up helping him. I find it's the same way. Like if I worked at rental car companies, I worked in education, I worked in mortgage companies and in compliance and foreclosures. And then sometimes there's like a problem that I only know the resolution because of something I did in the past. So I do feel that like things just kind of fall into place and,
I was just telling my son that he moved back to Michigan for 1 year to live with his best friend, and we just moved him home a few months ago. And he needed to jump into a job quickly. So he jumped back into the restaurant industry, which he wasn't thrilled about. And I was having this conversation about, when I said life experience earlier, I'm like, what you don't know right now is you're collecting life experience, and you will apply it at times that you thought, oh, wow, I had no idea. I mean, I was a cocktail waitress for many, many years. The amount of times I've had to actually rely on TABC, Texas Alcoholic and Beverage Commission. I'm like, oh, I know that. I mean, you pull these little things from your memory and you've got knowledge. And I said, while it may not seem like working in the kitchen at a restaurant right now is glamorous, I promise you're going to have encounters there that you'll pull from later. And then sure enough, that was about 2 weeks ago. And sure enough, I think 2 days ago, he said, hey, I met Chef Tatsuya, and it's a pretty renowned chef. And he's like, I feel like doors might be opened. And I was like, see, so you just have to kind of just go with life, but chase things also, don't sit around and let them happen. So I agree with you. I pull things from different bouts of life all the time.
Yeah. And Nikki, love enjoying, we don't get together and stuff, but love seeing you on social media. You're very inspiring, love following along with your journey. So best of luck to you, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
To all my listeners, please hit the subscribe button, and Piano Man, take us out.
Need a lawyer? Are you having financial, criminal, or family challenges? Call or text the Mark Kachi Law Firm, 215-439-7899.
I need a lawyer, a lawyer, a lawyer.